Okay, so good morning. Let's keep talking about clausal sentences. Okay, so again, it's never too much to remember uh, the difference between sentences and clauses, which is the more complex and which is the less complex unit. Do you still remember? What's the most basic unit, sentence or clause?
Close.
Clause. That's correct. And then clauses get together and form sentences, okay? And these sentences are joined either by means of coordination or subordination, okay? Coordination when both of them have independent meaning, semantic meaning, and subordination when one of them is meaningless, and then you have to put it inside the context of the previous sentence. Not really the previous, because depending on the order of the sentence, the first one is the dependent and the second one is the main clause. Well, so clausal sentences are sentences composed by only one clause, and I think you are already familiar with this notion of clausal sentence. And these clausal sentences can be split into subject and predicate. Okay, so we should review the notions of subject and predicate. Take this example: they study. How would you split this into subject and predicate? A very basic sentence like they study. Where's the subject?
They.
Yeah, seems to be obvious, okay? I'll be asking you obvious questions, but we are going to extend the degree of complexity, okay, as we start from very simple sentences to more complex ones. So they is the subject, and study. How about study? We call it
Predicate.
the predicate,
Predicate.
okay? But inside subject and predicate, we have other syntactic elements, okay? So let's take this. Study is the predicate, and they is the subject, and study is also a verb because predicates demand a verb, okay? In this case, study is the only word, it is the predicate, and it is the verb, and it is also what we call the predicator, okay? Because study is the head of the predicate, okay? So a new notion here is the notion of predicator. Predicator is the word, let's put it this way, it's the word in charge of the predicate. It's the main word, it's the principal word of a predicate, a verb, okay? Normally, no, all the time, it's a verb. The predicator is the word in charge of the predicate. That's it. So in the case above, the predicator has nothing to take care of. What does it mean? The predicator does not have a sequence of words to be in charge of. It's in charge of itself. Okay, so it's both the predicate, the verb, and the predicator. But sentences, some clausal sentences, are bigger than this one. Okay, but taking this simple example, we can say that the predicate is made up of only one predicator. Okay, now take this case: I am a student. How would you split this into subject and predicate? The subject is I,
I.
and am a student is the
Predicate.
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 Now, the case I bought a car. Again, we have I as the subject, and the predicate is bought
Got a
a
car.
car. But there are some differences between the first example above and the example down about the car. In the first case, I am a student. What kind of relationship is the predicate establishing with the subject? Is it a relationship of doing or of being?
Being.
Being. I am a student. That's what I am. Now, I bought a car. The car is detached from myself. The car is something I act over, but I do not act over the notion of student. This is what I am. Okay? So let's see the differences here. I have I as the subject, am a student as the predicate. And where would you say the predicator is?
Say the verb to be.
Yeah, it's to be. Am. Am is the predicator that we are going to represent by this letter P over it. Now, what kind of relationship is established between I and I student? And now we have to use the notion of phrases. Let's analyze this. Am a student is a verb phrase. We know that from the previous class because it's a verb phrase with a noun phrase contained. Where is the noun phrase?
A student.
I student is a noun phrase. And how do we know that? We know that from the notion that noun phrases as well as nouns, they can only be one of these two elements syntactically speaking in a sentence, either the subject or the object. Okay. But a student here is a kind of tricky. Taking it as the object, it's kind of tricky because I am a student. The object is something we act over, but you are not acting over the notion of being a student. That's what you are. The student and I, it's the same entity in the world. Okay. When you say I and when you say a student, you are talking about the same referent in the world. Do you all follow this way of thinking? So I cannot act over myself. Okay. So let's see what happens here. A student, as you know, is a noun phrase, and noun phrases work as a noun. Okay. So up to here, there are lots of similarities between I am a student and I bought a car. Take this predicate here, bought a car. I as the subject, bought a car as the predicate, and the predicator is in I bought a car, the
But.
bought. Okay,
Wait.
that's it. That's it. Okay, so apparently, and just apparently, we have similar structures. A subject, a predicate, and the only verb as the predicator. And we also have a noun phrase inside the verb phrase bought a car. What is this noun phrase? I bought something. Everything I can everything I can substitute by a pronoun is a noun phrase. Okay? If I can get a whole phrase and call it or something or that or whatever pronoun you could, you can say you are dealing with a noun phrase. Okay, so a car is also a noun phrase, which means it works as a noun or as a pronoun. Okay, but there is a difference between a car and a student. They are both noun phrases, and we learned about noun phrases. They behave either as the subject or the object. Now, there is a third entity that I haven't mentioned before, and I'm going to, okay, which is the complement, okay? Let's take the case of I am a student. A student in purple, we cannot say it is an object, as I told you, because we don't act over it, okay? So a student goes back to I to describe it, okay? So it's like I equals a student, okay? A student describes I. That's what I am. So I say a student is a predicative complement. Can you think of other examples in which we have these predicative complements? Let me go to Word. Think of sentences with a similar structure as I am a student. For example, here, tired. Okay. Well, tired is an adjective, isn't it? How would you, let me just use the full form here. We are tired. So the subject here is we, and are tired is the predicate. Do you all agree? Now, where is the
Yes.
predicator?
Are.
Are. So let's write down letter P here for predicator. Okay. Well, tired is what kind of word class? An adjective, isn't it? Is it an adjective? Do you all agree? Now, what is tired about? What is tired referring back to? Tired is referring back to we. Okay. So tired is the same as we. Tired is a predicative complement. In the case of adjectives, it's kind of easy to understand because predicative complements will describe back either the subject or the object. Okay. And we know that adjectives have this property of describing, of giving attributes, of being predicative. What is the meaning of predicate something? He's full of predicates. He's full of qualities. Okay, so tired is an adjective working as a predicative complement. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Now we can get the same structure and change it for a noun. Give me any noun. We are
We are friends.
friends.
I was thinking on that example.
Good. We are friends. Friends is now a noun. Is it still describing we?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Friends is what we are. Okay. Friends is describing we. Friends is giving an attribute to the pronoun we. It's giving we a predication. Okay. It's a predicative complement. Because being friends is not acting over something, it's being something. Okay. It's experiencing the situation. Okay. So, what I'm trying to show you here is that noun phrases or nouns, okay, as I said, some people like to treat nouns as noun phrases. Friends is a noun. Consequently, it will behave exactly the same way as a noun phrase. Friends is not an object for no action here. There is no action being uh, executed in being friends. It's kind of passive. Okay, we are friends. We equals friends. This is the equation. Okay, so friends refers back to the subject we, describing what we are. Okay, we equals friends. It is a predicative complement. Okay, let's go back to the slide. So predicative complements describe something else in the sentence. These predicative complements can be subject-oriented when they describe back the subject, or object-oriented when they describe back the object. Okay? Now take I bought a car. A car is a noun phrase as well, but the car has, let's say, received the action of my buying. Okay? I buy something, I do something, I change the reality for something else. That's my object. Okay? So in this case, a car is an object. Being is not the same as buying. Buying is an action. Okay? Because we are used to define verbs as the action. Yeah. But some verbs are action words and some others are state of being words. And that's my point in this slide. I'm trying to show you that when we have a verb that is a state of being, what comes after it as a noun phrase is, instead of an object, a predicative complement. Okay? Although they have similar roles in terms of syntactic analysis, they are playing a different role because a car and I, we are detached units in the world. The car has nothing to do with I except that it has suffered an action from part of I. Now, student is not suffering any action. In fact, it is the subject, again, being described. Take the case of they are nice. Do you think this is a case of predicative complement or of object, the element in purple? Nice. In the case of they are nice, is nice a predicative complement or an object?
Predicative complement.
Exactly, because nice, considering it as an adjective or an adjective phrase, okay, I'm putting the more general definition with adjective phrase. You can just consider isolated adjectives as nice playing the same role. Nice is referring back to they. It describes they. That's what they are, okay? So it's a predicative complement, and I say it's a predicative complement which is subjective because it is referring back to the subject, okay? I can establish a relationship of equality, of coincidence between nice and they. So they is the subject, nice describes they, so it's a predicative complement that we call subjective, or a predicative complement that is subject oriented. Okay? Any questions about predicative complements up to now? Todo mundo está seguindo direitinho? Tá tranquilo? A diferença entre objeto e predicative complement?
Sim.
Não, qual que é a diferença mesmo?
The difference is objects are external to the subject. I took the phone. The phone
Yeah.
is not me. It's something I act over. Now,
The predicative
I am,
complement.
yes, the predicative complement describes back the subject. Like, she is so intelligent. So intelligent is an adjective that refers back to she, okay? It's her property, and she and intelligent is the same entity. So intelligent is a predicative complement. With a noun, she's an actress. Okay, an actress is a noun phrase, but that's what she is. I cannot separate her, the pronoun she. I cannot detach the pronoun she and the word actress, because both of them refer to the same person. Okay, so I say it's a predicative complement. Okay, an actress is a noun phrase playing the role of a predicative complement, of describing back the subject. Okay, is it clear the difference now between object and predicative complement? Objects are external, and predicative complements are a kind of description of defining. Okay, when I say, for example, the earth is round. The earth and round is the property of the earth. So round and the earth is the same thing. Okay, round is a predicative complement. Okay, any questions about this? Now, predicative complements are not always subject oriented. Okay, we are going to see that some predicative complements can be object oriented when they refer back to the object. We are going to have examples with these properties. Okay, let's take the case of the sentence, I gave him a book. Let's try to do some synthetical analysis here. First of all, would you please separate subject and predicate for me here? I gave him a book. I know it seems obvious, but I'd like to have your interaction. Subject,
Subject is I.
I, the subject.
gave him a book, is the
predicate.
predicate. What is the predicator?
Gave.
Okay. Okay, and we have some different colors here. Okay, so a book. What kind of a phrase is a book? Is it a verb phrase, a noun phrase, a determinative phrase, an adjective phrase? What kind of phrase is a book? Gave him a book is a verb phrase, but how about a book? Can you change it and place a pronoun instead?
Well, I could say I gave it to him.
I gave it to him, which is the canonical. Yes, you are good. You follow the canonical structure. Okay, but let's keep this structure like this with this pronoun him after the verb for a moment. In this order, in this exact order, what would you say about a book? Is it a noun phrase or any other kind of phrase? And how would you argument about this? Can you replace a book for a pronoun? Like, I gave him it. I gave him that. As you said, in I gave it to him, you changed some other elements in the sentence, but as you see, a book can be substituted by it. I gave it to him. You inserted the preposition to, okay? But maybe to prove that a book can be replaced by it. So a book is a noun phrase. Do you all agree? Teacher, why is it a noun phrase? Because it can be replaced by a pronoun. And pronouns are the same entity as nouns. Do you all agree with that? The purple part is a noun phrase. A book is a noun phrase.
But won't it be, I could say, incorrect if you substitute for a pronoun without changing the other?
It would, okay? It would. We are not taking this as grammatical. We are just considering if in isolation, okay? Looking at a book in isolation, if it's replaceable, okay? Not in terms of grammar, but in terms of, can I call it, like in math, when you have a complicated equation, like, can I call it X and solve X before? Okay, it's like that. Okay, I gave it to him. Of course, you will have to insert um, the to, okay, to indicate the direction of the giving. Okay, and this is my next topic because we are going to talk about transitiveness of the verb to give. Okay, I understood your worry. Okay, but here when I say can I replace for a pronoun, it's just to see is it grammatically possible to call a book. I don't know. I gave him that thing. Okay, like consider this as a pronoun. Okay. Anyway, a book is classically an object. Can we act over books?
Yes.
We can read books. We can buy books. We can tear books apart. We can burn books. I hope they don't. We can carry books in a backpack. So a book is an object. It's the classical definition of an object. It's something that we can act over. Okay. Now, how about him? Can
It's an
people be
object too.
yeah, my question is can people be objects?
Yeah,
And
they can. For example, if you hit someone, the
mhm,
object is the person.
that's it. That's it. We can act over people as well. Okay. But if you look at the verb to give and the way it is related to him or to the book, you will see there is a different relationship established. And Mateus has already mentioned that I gave a book to him. Now, what is the function? What is the word class, the part of speech for to? To is a preposition, isn't it? I gave a book to him. And prepositions indicate what? They are prepositions. So prepositions indicate
Place, space.
place, a positioning, yeah, a direction. Okay. So when I give something, I give this something, I act over this something, and I also act over the person that's going to receive that something. Okay. This person is the direction of my action. Prepositions are called prepositions because they anticipate a position or, if you prefer, a direction. Him is the direction of my giving. Do you all agree?
Yes.
Yes.
So, giving is a kind of verb that gives us a notion of movement. And if there is a movement, there is a direction. And him is the direction where the giving goes. And a book is the thing that gets given. It's the object which I act over. So I say that the book is the direct object. I act directly over it. And him is the indirect object, okay? Because it's the direction of my giving. And if there is a direction, there must be a preposition indicating the direction, okay? Is it clear what direct and indirect objects are? It's a better way to describe instead of that decoreba, that indirect objects are always preceded by a preposition. Why? Because do I have a preposition in the original sentence? I gave him a book.
No.
There is no preposition, which does not mean that the relationship between the verb and him is not of an indirect relationship. Okay. It's not because of the absence of the preposition that I can say that it's a direct object. It's not, because it's the direction where the giving goes. And that's why Mateus was very smart to change the sentence to say, I gave a book to him. And then the preposition kind of appears. Okay. It is revealed. Another example. We drove her crazy. Let's try to do some synthetical analysis here. Subject and predicate, please.
Subject is we and predicate is drove.
Yeah, whose predicator is the verb to drive. Okay. Now we drove her crazy.
Oh, I was saying predicator, but I said predicates. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. We have the predicate. The predicate is drove her
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Okay. And the predicator is the verb
Is
to
drove.
drive.
Yeah.
Now, what is the function of her? Did we act over her, or is
Yes.
her the direction of the action?
We act over her. We drove her crazy. So
Mm-hmm. She's not the direction of the action then, is it? So let's try to remember these pronouns here. What do we call him, her, them, and us? What are they called in the grammar?
correct
Yeah,
are the object pronouns, right?
perfect. Perfect. They are called object pronouns. So why do you suppose they are called like that? Object pronouns, objective pronouns. Why are they called objective? The word objective reminds us of object. Okay, so in this case, her is playing the role of an object. Okay, in this case, we caused her to change her mood. So her is the direct object. We acted over her. We drove her crazy. Crazy is what then? Is crazy describing something else in the sentence? What's the syntactic function for the word crazy now? Is it an object?
Crazy is her state of being.
It's her state of being. It's an adjective that's describing her state of being. So it's referring back to her. Okay? So crazy is a predicative complement, but now it is object oriented. We drove her crazy. We made him mad. Okay? So crazy and her is the same person. Crazy is going back to define her. Okay? So the function of crazy here is saying we caused her to be like this. And now her and crazy, her equals crazy. Okay? So it's a predicative complement. But it has nothing to do with the subject. It has to do with her, which happens to be the object, the direct object. So this is a predicative complement, object oriented. Okay? So note that the subject is doing something to her. This is an action. Okay? Going back in the slide here, if we go back, we see that her and him play very different roles. I gave him a book. It's kind of passive. He's just receiving the book. Now, when I acted over her, she is what I act over directly. No mediation here. And she gets crazy. Okay? So we are doing something to her. Okay? That's why her is the direct object. So these pronouns, him, her, them, us, they are called objective pronouns because they behave in a way that they can be either the direct or the indirect object in a sentence. Okay? Any questions so far? Tá tudo bem, gente?
Sim.
You're all right.
Okay. Okay, so crazy, as I showed you, as I argumented here, is a predicative complement objective, of an objective nature, because crazy has to do with her, not with we. Okay? Predicative complements can be noun phrases and they can also be adjectives, which is the case. So we have basically 5 patterns for sentences, okay, of canonical structures, okay? We are still talking about canonical clauses, and I'm trying to show here how verbs will transit, okay, and what kind of structure these properties of verbs and the way they are related to objects or to predicative complements will imply. So we have from the most basic to the more complex structures, we have the one that is subject predicate, like I run, okay? I run is an intransitive clause. It's not necessary to say where I'm running to. I run, okay? It's an intransitive verb, does not require an object, okay? Or I am a runner. In the first one, I have just subject and predicate. In the second one here, subject, predicate, I am a runner, and the predicative complement. Subject, predicator, and the predicative complement. A runner is what I am. I equals a runner. Right?
Right.
Okay. Also, I teach English. Please consider this. Let me correct this because looks like this is kind of unformatted. Okay. Like this. Okay. Now, I teach English. In this case, I is the subject. Teach English is the predicate, whose predicator is the verb to teach. And English is what? Is it a predicative complement or an object?
It's an object.
It's an object. Direct or indirect?
Correct.
Direct, okay? I teach English. There is an immediate and there's no preposition between I and English. I act over English directly by teaching it, okay? So I teach English is a kind of structure that's subject, predicator, and direct object. We also have another kind of pattern that is subject, predicate, or indirect object, okay? This subject, predicate, indirect object structure Can you think of an example of subject, predicate, and indirect object? A subject can be any pronoun or any noun phrase, like the house, predicate, predicator. The house
Has been sold to him. No.
has been sold. Yeah, but this is passive, then this would not be canonical. House, um, but I can manage that. I sold him house. To be like this, I sold him the house. Okay.
Yes.
So here I have the object and the house is what I sold. It's still the direct object. It will not work. I need subject, predicate plus indirect object. Gosh.
So,
Super
like Portuguese indirect is when you need a preposition, right?
Yeah. I can't recall now. Probably there is an example, but uh,
Where is
you,
the preposition in I teach him syntax? Where is the
I teach
preposition?
I teach him syntax. I teach syntax to him. Okay,
Oh yeah,
him.
if you
Yeah,
show
him
him.
is the direction of the teaching. Yeah, so that's it. Well, in any case, we have we have the subject, predicate, and direct object or indirect object. Okay. Now I teach English can be also subject, predicate, and indirect object plus direct object, like this. I teach predicator, him, indirect object, the direction of the teaching, syntax. Syntax is what I teach. I and syntax is directly related. I act over syntax by teaching it. Now, him is the receiver of my action of teaching. So it's my indirect object. There is a mediation between I and him caused by the transitiveness of the verb to teach. And we also have the structure subject plus predicator. I made them. Them is the object because I act over them. Angry. And angry is the predicative complement describing them. Okay. Subject, predicate, and indirect object. Let me look for an example of this. Just a moment. Uh, let me get a browser here. I can't recall a structure with an indirect object. Well, think of verbs that need complements. Okay. I'm going to, again, let me share here. I am going to New York. Okay. We have now the example. I finally could find it. Well, who goes? Go somewhere. So if you go somewhere, you need a preposition. And here it is, the preposition. So it's the example of subject, I, predicator. In this case, it's verb, a verb phrase, am going, whose predicator is going. Okay, it's the most important. So here I have a verb capsule. I, subject, and predicate. Let's go by parts here. I, subject, am going to New York City, predicate. The predicator here is the main verb. It's the verb to go, predicator. Okay, and to New York City is a prepositional phrase, and New York City is a compound noun. In fact, it's an acronym, but it's working as a noun. We are going to consider this acronym as a noun. Proper name. And my relationship, the relationship of my going and New York City needs a direction. I need to indicate the direction, and the direction is to, okay? So I am not in a direct relationship with New York City. I am in a relationship with New York City that is mediated by the verb to go. Is it clear now the example? Of subject, predicate, and indirect object. So New York City is the indirect object here. This noun is the indirect object. Okay? It in purple. New York City is an indirect object now. Now I have the example here that I was trying to show you the 5 patterns. In the first case, I teach English. Opa. Back here. Okay. So this structure is represented here. I teach English. If I want to show you subject, predicate, plus indirect object, I could put I am going home. Okay. Or I'm going to New York. Teacher, but there is no preposition. This preposition is implicit. Okay. I am going home. Home, I'm not related to home as an I unless by the mediation of the verb to go. Who goes, goes somewhere. Okay. So I'm going home. I'm going to Italy. All this is a relationship of subject, predicate, and indirect object. I could simplify it by doing like this. Okay. And then you have a more generic example. Okay. I didn't do that because I wanted you to show, to see the simplest one, which is the direct object. Okay. But it's also possible here that we have an indirect object. What I mean here is that I can have only one object and it is direct or indirect, or 2 objects. One of them being the indirect and the second one being the direct, as in I teach him syntax. I teach him. Him is one of the objects. Syntax is another. But the way I am related to him is not the same way I'm related to syntax. My relationship with syntax is active. It is not mediated. But my relationship in relation to him is mediated by the direction of the action of teaching. Okay, so these are the 5 canonical structures in English. Okay, some people call it the 5 sentence patterns. Right? Any question about these patterns? Talvez o que tenha ficado confuso para vocês seja esse primeiro das transitive clauses, né? A gente tem as intransitivas e aí a gente tem as transitivas em verde. O que eu quero dizer é que eu deixei aqui uma estrutura, um exemplo da estrutura, não dei o outro, né? Desse or aqui, mas poderia ter, entendeu? Sujeito, predicador e objeto direto. I teach English. Sujeito, predicador e objeto indireto. I am going home. Home é uma direção, né? É a direção do meu ir. So there is a mediation, there is a preposition, although not clearly expressed as a to, I'm going to home. We all know that who goes home takes a direction, and the direction is the direction of home. Okay, I'm going to Italy. I'm going to UFMA. Aí a preposição já aparece. Ok, então a estrutura pode ser SPDO ou SPIO. Ficou claro isso? Eu não gostei muito da maneira como esse slide está organizado, mas eu vou tentar achar depois uma outra forma, mas foi a que eu achei para generalizar melhor. Dúvida, gente? So intransitive clauses are about the subject. Quando eu digo I run, run é o que eu faço, ok? I am a runner. Again, it's still all about the subject. Transitive clauses, there is a transition, e por isso elas são transitive, to the world outside. Então há uma relação entre o sujeito e o mundo, né, no qual ele se relaciona. É por isso que transita. Okay? That's why it's a transitive verb. Like love. Okay? Love can be intransitive. I love. Okay? As a state of being. I love everything. Okay? Or I love her. I love him. So her, him, they are outside me. Okay? Apesar de algumas pessoas acharem que não, but it's outside. Transitive verbs imply a relationship with something external to the subject. And intransitive clauses are the subject with itself. Intransitive and transitive clauses can be joined together to form more complex sentences. Okay, and these clauses will be connected by either coordinators or subordinators, as you already know. And we call them the conjunctions, the bigger group of conjunctions, so that they will form compound sentences. Is this okay? The notion of compound sentences? Compound sentences are sentences that have more than one clause. Okay, and these two clauses, three clauses or more, they will always be joined by either a coordinator, if they are coordinate clauses, or subordinators when they are subordinate clauses. As you know, all clauses are sentences, and we call them clausal sentences. Okay, but sentences can have more than one clause. And this is the notion of compound sentences. Take the case of, I watched the game and it was exciting. Where is the coordinator? It's and. Look at them in isolation. I watched the game. Is it completely meaningful for you if I tell you, I watched the game? Do you
Which
understand?
game? I can understand, but which game?
Okay, but I watched the game. Okay, we are talking about the game yesterday on TV. Okay,
Yeah, it's
I
understandable.
watched the game. Is it completely meaningful in terms of grammatically meaningful? I mean,
Yes,
there is a
yes, yes.
subject, there is a verb, and there is the thing I watched. Okay, an object. Okay, it was exciting. Okay, if we are talking about the game, perfect. It was. Oh, teacher, how was the game? It was exciting. Again, I have a grammatically complete sentence. It as a subject, a predicator, and an adjective referring back to it, a predicative complement, subject-oriented, okay? The two pieces of information kind of work independently. I watched the game is grammatically perfect. The game was exciting. It was exciting. Is grammatically perfect. But I want to establish a relationship of a complementarity between watching the game and considering it exciting. So I use and. When I have two clauses and each of them is grammatically perfect in terms of having a subject and a predicate, okay? They mean on their own, but I want to connect both ideas. What I have is a coordinator in the middle of it, okay? Just to join these two pieces of independent information, okay? Now, when one of the clauses is meaningless, unless you have to contextualize it, then what you have is a subordinator. Let's look at this second example in purple. I invited her to go to the mall that has just opened. If I tell you has just opened, or that has just opened, Do you understand it?
No.
No way. Okay. You would ask, what has just opened? Oh, the mall. But the mall is in the previous clause. And it's being referred back by the that. Yeah. If I told you the mall has just opened, is it completely meaningful? Or
Yes.
a mall, yes, a mall has just opened is an independent clause. Vamos tentar não fazer confusão aqui em relação à dependência ou não. Quando eu digo the mall has just opened, eu tenho todos os elementos que constituem uma canonical clause prototípica. Eu tenho um sujeito, the mall, eu tenho um núcleo verbal, has just opened, ok? Que é o predicado. Então, eu sei que tem uma relação entre esse sujeito e esse estado do ser ou essa ação, ok? Agora, quando eu digo that has just opened, that, nesse caso, é uma conjunção, não é o that pronome demonstrativo. Né? That has just opened, ou quando eu digo só has just opened, eu tenho uma oração que não tem sujeito. E uma das coisas que vocês já devem ter reparado na língua inglesa é que na língua inglesa não existe a figura do sujeito elíptico, né, ou oculto. Quando a gente diz it's raining, fica claro o que é esse it? What is it? The rain is raining. The weather is raining. A gente não sabe ao certo traduzir dessa maneira, né? It's raining, como que a gente traduz para o português?
Está chovendo.
Está chovendo, chove.
Mas
Uhum.
seria o mesmo caso da oração sem sujeito no português, né? Que apesar do verbo estar do jeito que está, a oração, no caso, não tem sujeito. Só que aqui, como eu digo, it's rain, o it vai ser o sujeito, né?
Isso. No inglês, o sujeito sempre é marcado. Né? Verbos como raining, a gente não consegue determinar exatamente a que esse pronome it se refere. Mas ele está lá, marcando e servindo a você até de orientação para a concordância desse verbo na terceira pessoa do singular. Né? It's raining. It's nice. Ah, o que você achou? Sei lá, o que você achou do jogo? Ah, legal. Foi legal. Em português a gente diz foi legal, numa boa. Mas em inglês a gente tem que dizer it was nice. Não existe o was nice. Um dos problemas de quem tenta aprender o inglês traduzindo ao pé da letra é aceitar a existência desse it que o português permite essa elipse do verbo, né? Esse do pronome, esse sumiço com o pronome, né? Essa implicitude. No inglês não tem implicitude, sujeito é sempre uma explicitude. E quando ele não está explícito, é porque essa oração ela é subordinada. Olha só o caso aqui. That has just opened. Esse that, essa conjunção that, ela está aqui justamente para suprir a carência de uma oração que não tem um sujeito. That has just opened. Quem? The mall. The mall that has just opened. Okay? The mall has just opened. Então, ele está referindo a algo que está na oração anterior. E aí, aqui a gente tem, então, um caso de dependência, tá? De uma oração da outra, porque uma delas não possui sujeito, esse sujeito é tomado como garantido da oração anterior. Ok? Ficou claro o que eu quis dizer por subordinação? O período se subordina porque ele não tem sentido independente. Se eu falar isso aqui em isolamento, sem o período anterior, sem a clause anterior, não consigo ter uma semântica disso. Não consigo atribuir sentido a isso. Has just opened. Primeira pergunta que vocês fazem, what? What, teacher, has just opened? Ah, the mall. The mall has just opened. Mas onde está o the mall? Ah, está na primeira oração, né? I invited her to go to the mall. Ok? O the mall, que é o objeto indireto dessa primeira oração, que é a direção para onde nós fomos, para onde eu a convidei, ele também funciona como sujeito dessa oração aqui, subordinada, que é iniciada pela conjunção that. A referência do que acabou de abrir está dada não na oração em si, mas numa oração anterior, da qual essa segunda oração depende. Está subordinada a, ok? Basicamente, o teste para saber se tem coordenação ou não é substituir o coordinator por period. Lembra quando vocês estavam discutindo técnicas de redação para fazer uma boa redação no Enem e as pessoas falavam, façam períodos curtos, né? Muitas coordenações, você faz um período super longo usando muito and, né? Muitos coordenadores, não só o and, né? Uma coisa e outra, uma ideia e outra. Então, cada ideia é um período. Pega aqui, I watched the game, period. Informação 1. The game was exciting. Informação 2. Ok? Pode, inclusive, ser o próprio it, né? Se tiver no mesmo parágrafo. O teste de colocar period, né, indica que se funciona com period, a relação que se tem é de coordenação. Agora vejamos aqui. I invited her to go to the mall. Tira a conjunção. Period. Has just opened. E faz algum sentido? Does it make any sense? I invited her to go to the mall. Has just opened. Ou eu tenho um problema de coesão? Essas duas ideias se encaixam tão bem quanto aqui?
Where?
Essas duas ideias se encaixam como uma sequência lógica? I watched the game. It was
Yes.
exciting.
Yes.
E essas duas aqui? I invited her to go to the mall. Has just opened. Elas se encaixam na sequência
Não.
lógica? Não. Por quê? Porque aqui eu tenho coordenação. O and is a coordinator. Enquanto aqui eu tenho subordinação. That is a subordinator. Por quê? Isso aqui não possui um sujeito, não possui uma semântica independente. Ok? Is this clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's talk a bit about verbs, okay? And verb inflection. Vamos voltar lá na morfossintaxe para lembrar o conceito de inflection. What is inflection? When do you use an inflectional morpheme? When is a morpheme considered an inflectional morpheme? What kind of words can be inflected? Can nouns be inflected?
Yes.
To express what? Deixa eu tirar esse slide para não confundir vocês. Deixa eu vir aqui só para a tela um pouco. Vamos pensar em inflexão. Can nouns be inflected? Nouns can be inflected, you told me. What for? Why do we inflect nouns? What do
To
we
act like other, how can I say? Like other word classes, like.
For instance, maybe to give a notion of number. Like
Yes.
student, students. I didn't change the notion. I didn't change the referent, but I changed the notion of number. Sometimes to give the notion of gender in a few English words, just a few English words. Sometimes I can inflect other word classes. I can inflect verbs. But why do we inflect verbs? For the same reasons as we inflect nouns? Sure not. What's the main purpose of inflecting a verb? Or what are the purposes of inflecting a verb? What is the
Changing
difference?
to the
Yes.
to the past, for example.
put it into the past is one of the purposes, okay? That's the difference of I teach English and yesterday I taught English. So what we have between teach and thought is a difference between the present, the simple present, and the preterite, okay, or the simple past, okay. This is one of the reasons that we inflect verbs. Okay, so we are now going to talk about verb inflection and what it has to do with syntax. We are going to try to articulate our notions of morphology with our notions of grammar. Give me just a moment to go back to the slide. So, verbs have a number of inflectional forms that are permitted or required in various grammatical constructions. So depending on the way, on the verb tense that you are using, you will have to inflect the verb so that it will fit the verb tense you want. The present tense for takes, the present tense form takes, for example, can occur as the verb of a canonical clause, whereas the past participle taken cannot, because as you already know, canonical clauses are never passive. Okay, so I say she takes care. Okay, she takes care of the baby. That's perfect. But I can never say she taken care of the baby. And then this asterisk here represents ungrammatical. Okay, every time you want to classify a piece of language as what we normally call wrong in morphosyntax, in syntax, we normally call it ungrammatical. She taken care is ungrammatical. Okay, it's a misuse of a verb inflection. Okay, this seems to be obvious, but just to show you the way to represent ungrammatical structures. So the notion of an action in the present will require the appropriate use of the different verb inflections that we have available. Okay, so we have these inflections over here. Okay, the great majority of verb lexemes have 6 inflectional forms. Okay, so our topic now is the verb. Okay, and the forms of a verb that we have. Okay, and if you know these 6 inflectional forms, you can form and you can describe any verb tense in English, because all the verb tenses in English are a kind of combination of these inflectional forms. What I mean here is that verb form is not the same as verb tense. Verb form is the raw material. Verb inflectional form is the raw material. Verb tense is the product of the manipulation, of the correct manipulation of verb forms. Okay? So the first one being the preterite, which you are familiar with, which is the final ed for regular verbs, like she checked the figures herself. We also have another inflection called third singular present, third person singular, which is the final S, checks. Okay. We have the plain present that many textbooks call the infinitive without to. Okay. But the technical term is plain present when the verb is in the present and it's not third person singular. Okay. So in the simple present, we will use always one of these two forms, either the third person singular, or the plain present. Okay, they check the figures themselves. We have the plain form when we have a modalizer, when we have a modal verb, like she may check the figures herself. Look, check and check. But one is the plain present, and the second one is the plain form. The plain present is a verb in the present, simple present. Now here I have a verb core Okay, I have a verbal capsule composed of may, which is a modal verb, and check. So may is working as a kind of auxiliary, and check is the principal verb. This is a kind of verb in its raw form. The verb to check, what's the plain form? Check. The verb to go, what's the plain form? Go. The verb to stay, the plain form is stay. Okay. We have the gerund participle, which is the famous ing, okay, that we use in the continuous verb tenses. Like she's checking the figures herself. This inflection here, this inflectional morpheme, ing, is called gerund participle. As you can see, we also need the auxiliary be because it's called present of be. Continuous. When I say continuous, I mean we should have the gerund participle of the principal verb. And finally, the past participle, that we have the auxiliary have, okay, in the past, and that's why past participle, and ed as the third column of those irregular verbs, the final ed, not as the preterite here, but as the participle. The participle of take is taken, but the preterite of take is took. Remember? O que eu quero chamar a atenção para vocês aqui é que talvez os verbos irregulares nos ajudem mais a compreender algumas distinções entre forma, né? No caso, verb form, que é o tempo, as inflectional forms, e tempo, ok? Checked and checked. É tudo ED. Aparentemente é a mesma coisa, mas não é, ok? Porque um é particípio e o outro é pretérito. E como que eu sei isso? Quando eu vou para um verbo irregular como take, she took the figures herself. She took the keys. The keys were taken. Took, taken. Aí tem diferença. O que no regular é tudo é de, quando eu vou para os verbos irregulares, alguns vão expressar claramente essa diferença, outros não. Há uma coincidência entre pretérito e particípio passado. Mas uma grande parte dos verbos irregulares expressa claramente essa diferença. O que eu quero dizer com isso? Although we have distinguished 6 different inflectional forms, 6 different forms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, preterite, singular present. Deixa eu ver o chat, só um minuto.
Foi o que eu levantei a mão. So, what exactly is the difference between plain form and plain present?
Ok, plain present tem conjugação. O verbo está conjugado. Ele está conjugado no presente simples. Exemplo. I play the guitar. Isso é uma conjugação. E como que eu sei que é uma conjugação? Quando eu troco o sujeito por he, eu preciso fazer adaptações. He plays the guitar. O plain form não é uma conjugação em si, ele é um infinitivo, uma espécie de infinitivo. I like to play the guitar. Esse play, ele não está conjugado, ele está na sua forma, muitas aspas aqui, na sua forma bruta. Por que eu sei? He likes to play the guitar. Quem vai sofrer inflexão é o verbo to like, que vai para o third person singular, né? Mas o to play fica lá do jeito que ele é na plain form, na forma pura, na forma bruta, no aspas, nome do verbo. Plain form é quando você usa o nome do verbo, geralmente nessas estruturas que tem esse aspecto do infinitivo. Plain form é o que normalmente se chama de infinitivo sem to, tá? Porque esse to de I like to play the guitar é porque who likes something or likes to do something. É parte da transitividade da regência do verbo to like, não é parte do verbo play, tá? Não sei se me fiz claro a diferença entre plain form e plain present. Plain present tem conjugação. Ele está no presente. Plain form, ele está no infinitivo. Ele está na sua forma rudimentar, no nome do verbo. Ok? Mas tem umas diferençazinhas entre form e shape. A gente vai falar delas agora. Ok? So we have 6 different inflectional forms. But we have just 4 shapes. Checked, checks, check, and checking. Se vocês tivessem que grosseiramente descrever para mim a diferença entre form e shape. Shape se refere a quê?
Como é que eu posso dizer? A forma do verbo em si.
Ao spelling, né? Ao
spelling.
spelling. Acontece que o shape do pretérito é o mesmo shape do past participle, no caso do verbo check. Quando a gente vai para os verbos irregulares, a gente vê que os shapes caem, né? Eles passam a ser diferentes entre pretérito e past participle em alguns casos, né? Então, eu tenho os morfemas inflexionais, ok? E eles vão, em termos de verb tense, ter 6 formas. Mas em termos de spelling, eles vão ter 4 shapes. Ok? 4. É porque se eu traduzir
Tem certos verbos.
Hum.
Tem certos verbos irregulares que eles têm 5 shapes, right?
Verbos regulares que têm
5 shapes.
5 shapes. Isso, porque eles têm diferentes manifestações gráficas e fonéticas, tá? Shape tem a ver com a grafia. Forma tem a ver com a função, né? Form, shape. Para traduzir isso é osso, porque assim, quando eu traduzo shape, eu também tenho forma, formato, né? Shape is related to spelling. Form is related to what I can do to create verb tenses. Ok? Vamos lá. Aqui uma definição de cada um. E aí fica aquela comparação que você me perguntou, Matheus, né? A diferença entre plain form e plain present. Plain form is identical with the lexical base of the word. It's not inflected with tense. Ok? Não há uma inflexão. Ele é idêntico à base lexical. Qual é a base lexical de to stay? É stay. Qual é a base lexical de to speak? É speak. Não há uma inflexão. O plain form é a ausência de inflexão. O plain present is inflected for tense, also identical with the lexical base. So, in terms of spelling, plain form and plain present, they are identical. But when you look at the verb tense, you will see that they are used in different verb tenses. It's just a coincidence that their spelling is the same, but their grammatical functions are differently. So again, plain present is inflected, whereas plain form is not inflected. Essa é a diferença. Plain form, not inflected. Plain present, inflected for tense. Also identical with the lexical base, and usually indicates present time, used in present tense and in either plural, first person and second person. Ok? Então é aquele verbo conjugado e que não é he, she, it. Porque se ele for he, she, it, ele vai ser manifestado como third person singular present. Se ele não é he, she, it, ele vem no plain present. O plain present é o irmão, entre aspas, do third person singular. Play, plays. I play the piano. He plays the piano. Plain form. I don't like to play rock music. Esse play de I don't like to play, esse é plain form. Ok?
Like
Be,
play present.
isso. O plain present, ele é verbo principal, ele está conjugado no presente. O plain form, ele está no infinitivo. Aspas, muitas aspas, o nome do verbo. A forma bruta do verbo. Ok? A forma não inflexionada do verbo. Ok? Plain form é verbo sem inflexão. Enquanto plain present é verbo com inflexão de presente, mas essa inflexão é um morfema zero, digamos assim. É um morfema vazio. Okay? Be is an exception because the first person is also different. O único exemplo em que a primeira pessoa difere das demais, eu tenho um caso de uma forma para a primeira pessoa, uma forma para a terceira pessoa singular e uma outra forma, que é o plain present, para as outras, para as demais. Então, eu tenho I am. Aí eu já tenho essa forma diferente, a forma da first person singular. I am. Aí eu tenho outra forma, que é o third person singular, que todo verbo tem. He, she, it, is. Né? Assim como he, she, it goes, he, she, it stays, he, she, it likes. Né? E eu tenho uma terceira forma, que é a das demais. You are, they are, we are, everybody are. Né? Todas as outras pessoas, eu uso are. Eu uso uma forma para I, outra forma para he, she, it, e a forma plain present, are. O plain present de to be é are. Mas o plain form de to be é
Be.
be. É isso. Então, uma forma interessante de saber se está no plain form ou no plain present é ver se esse verbo fosse be, como ele seria? Ele seria colocado aqui como are, is ou am, ou ele seria colocado aqui como be, né? Naturalmente como be, o famoso nome do verbo, né? Em uma oração do tipo It's important that you be smart. Eu não digo It's important that you are smart, né? It's important that you be smart, que é a linguagem do é o subjuntivo, né? I want you to be here tomorrow. Novamente, plain form, né? Sem inflexão. Não é I want you to are ou is ou am here tomorrow. I want you to be here tomorrow. Nesse caso, eu uso plain form. Ok? By shape. Agora eu vou definir form e shape. Né? By shape, we mean the spelling or pronunciation. Does the preterite and past participle of the lexeme check have the same shape as do the plain present tense and the plain form? Okay? Da mesma maneira que se eu pegar aqui o check, né, o verbo check, the preterite and the past participle. O preterite e o past participle dele tem o mesmo shape, terminação é de. O mesmo acontece com o plain present e o plain form. Plain present, check, e plain form, check. É por isso que, apesar de ter 6 formas, eu tenho 4 shapes. Porque eu tenho 2 coincidências que são de spelling e pronúncia. Eu tenho a coincidência entre preterite e past participle, e eu tenho a coincidência entre plain present e plain form. Isso acontece com verbos regulares. Okay? Verbos irregulares vão se manifestar com formas diferentes. E esse é o tópico. There are a good number of irregular verbs where the preterite and the past participle do not have the same shape. Example, took. She took the message was taken by her. Nesse caso, eu tenho different shapes for the preterite and the past participle. Okay? And it's very easy to decide whether any particular instance of the shape check is a preterite form or a past participle. What you need to do is ask which form of the verb like take would be needed in the construction in question. Você pega uma frase que tem checked, que é um verbo regular, e testa um outro verbo cujos shapes sejam diferentes. Como take poderia ser outro verbo, né? See, saw, seen, né? Poderia ser, usar o verbo to see. She may have checked the figures herself. Vamos usar take, que está no slide, mas depois a gente testa com outro. She may have taken the figures herself. Vai lá na tabela e olha em qual coluna você vai achar taken. Na coluna de past participle. Então, este verbo também está no past participle. Ah, professor, poderia ser o verbo to see? Poderia. She may have seen the figures herself. E seen vai estar na mesma terceira coluna de past participle. Então, para testar um verbo regular, porque tem essa coincidência de shape, você pode usar um verbo irregular com 3 formas distintas. Infinitivo, pretérito e past participle diferentes entre si. E aí você desambigua a situação. Ok? We are going to talk more about verbs, okay? But before, I will send you a list of exercises before we come back. Just let me just finish the screen sharing. Eu deixei os slides para vocês lá no Google Drive, pessoal. Opa, eu ainda estou aqui? Tô. Deixa eu só parar. Eu deixei os slides disponíveis para vocês no Google Drive, para vocês estudarem primeiro essa questão de clausal sentences, ok? E eu vou deixar alguns exercícios em seguida para vocês olharem a questão da coordenação e da subordinação. Uma lista de exercícios, tá? Vou disponibilizar para vocês pelo Google Drive, junto com a gravação da aula de hoje, para vocês terem uma noção. Assim como materiais e leituras sobre clausal sentences and coordination and subordination. Sim, Query. Sim, pode falar?
Desculpa. Professor, a aula do dia 14, o senhor ainda vai colocar? Porque só está do dia 16 da semana passada.
Ah, eu devo ter perdido ela pelo e-mail, porque eles fazem a conversão e demora um pouquinho, chega praticamente à tarde a conversão para mim. Eu vou procurar a aula do dia 14, então. Deixa eu ver se já está no e-mail. Que eu já faço essa adaptação para vocês. Dia 14. Ah, tá aqui. Realmente passou batido por mim. Então eu vou fazer agora essa adaptação no Siga para disponibilizar para vocês. Obrigado por perceber. Tô corrigindo aqui. Vocês vão ver que vai chegar uma notificação de vídeo para vocês, tá?
A de hoje, o senhor vai botar ainda essa semana?
Provavelmente, eu preciso que a conversão aconteça, né? Antes de viajar, eu quero deixar todos os sistemas, todas as páginas de todas as disciplinas com seus respectivos vídeos e algumas atividades, né, e leituras de apoio, tá? Vou deixar algumas instruções, vou gravar algumas notícias para a gente retomar a partir do dia 6, né, no sincrônico, mas vou deixar vocês com algumas recomendações de leitura e todos os vídeos organizados também. Deixa eu só já organizar o de vocês. E vocês
Essa quinta, então, não vai ter aula, professor?
Não, nessa quinta a gente já entra no recesso, já é 23, né? Pode-se dizer que é uma véspera de Natal, eu preciso ir lá ver a minha mãe.
E a aula volta quando?
Sim. Oi, perdão, pode falar?
A aula voltaria quando? As aulas?
Deixa eu ver, pelo nosso calendário, eu retorno dia 5, né? Dia 6, quinta dia 6, tá? 6 de janeiro. Deixa eu editar aqui.
Professor, o senhor poderia mandar o senhor vai mandar esses slides de agora, né?
Já estão no Google Drive, tá? Os slides estão no Google Drive.
O senhor podia mandar aqueles primeiros também, para a gente ter...
Exatamente, estão todos já. Até o dia de hoje, tá?
Obrigada.
Eu editei a aula 8, tá? Com um novo link. E agora eu vou cadastrar aula 9. Vocês me confirmam se vão receber o e-mail, tá? Aula do dia 16. Aqui. Me confirmem se receberam daqui a pouco um e-mail. Em alguns minutos, 2, 3 minutos, vocês vão receber um e-mail institucional dizendo que tem um novo vídeo cadastrado. Eu acho que agora está certinho. A aula do dia 16 está lá. Do dia 16 e do dia 14. Dia 14, aula 8.
No
Recebi.
SIGA já apareceu.
Já apareceu, né?
Dia 21, que é hoje.
Perfeito. E eu vou... cadastrado como dia 21, isso. E eu vou elaborar uma lista para vocês pensarem sobre coordenação, subordinação e um pouquinho de análise sintática, tá? Achar os phrases, noun phrases, verb phrases. Eu vou fazer um compilado, né, com algumas definições, leituras, os slides já estão lá, tá? Para que vocês possam resolver alguns exercícios com clausal sentences, com canonical clauses, né? Para a gente poder ter esse conceito bem definido, tá bom? O que é canônico, o que é não canônico e como transformar. Né? Um exercício de transformação de canonical clause, de non-canonical em canonical, para vocês poderem fazer análise sintática, tá bom? Para não ficar só tão teórico. Certinho, pessoal?
Sim.
A gente então se vê após a virada do ano, tá? Para, assim, tá todo mundo meio cansado, meio sobrecarregado, eu sei, tá difícil. Mas boas festas para vocês, não deixem de pegar os materiais para rever, tá? Mas curtam também as festas, porque tá difícil para todo mundo, né? Não tá fácil ficar trancado dentro de casa. Espero que seja o último período assim, mas espero, mas duvido um pouco, tá bom? Então, Feliz Natal para todo mundo, um bom ano novo, tá? Boa virada de ano, não sei quem vai viajar, se for viajar, boa viagem, se não for, boa estadia, tá bom? Boas festas para vocês.
Eu também, professor.
Feliz Natal, feliz
Prometo
Natal.
voltar um pouquinho. Prometo voltar um pouquinho
Também,
mais
professor.
descansado. Prometo voltar um pouquinho mais descansado, tá?
Vamos tentar também.
Feliz Natal, feliz ano novo, professor,
Eu tô
também.
quase pifando aqui. Valeu para vocês também, gente. Tô quase pifando. Ainda mais dando sintaxe, né? Morfologia ainda vai tranquilo. Mas sintaxe, deixa eu parar de gravar para poder dizer o que eu penso de sintaxe.